Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It's Thursday. It's week 2. It's the preview show. I'm Patrick Daugherty, joined by Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak. We're going to break down the entire weekend and Monday slate. Monday, 2 games that everyone's begging for. See the Geno Smith play 10 Eastern Monday night. We're all in love with that. So we're going to break down Jaguars at Bengals, 2 teams with questions after week 1. Some of them good, some of them very bad. For the Bengals, Bears at Lions, 2 teams with a lot of questions. A Super Bowl rematch in week 2, Eagles at the Chiefs. Every game we're going to go long on. We don't go long on Thursday Night Football on Thursdays because we preview that on Tuesday. The show gets out around when the game kicks off, actually a little before. But I just got to say it. So listen, normally I cover every Thursday night game for our website. Tonight I have to miss the first half. Christopher Crawford is going to write up this game. It just used to be back in my day that it did, or whatever, Titans and Jaguars, who cares? Why are we putting good games on Thursday night that aren't the opening week kickoff on NBC? Why are we putting good games on Thursday? Commanders and Packers, that belongs Sunday, 4:25 Eastern. Tonight, it needs to be the Jaguars and another Southern team.
It's not even just it's the Jaguars, of course. There's a second specific team that they should be playing. Pop quiz. Who is it?
I don't know. Everyone knows.
Titans.
Everyone knows it's the Titans, but it's
Titans. And what uniforms are they wearing? Pop quiz.
Oh yeah, Color Rush obviously goes out.
Color Rush. Yeah. Mustard yellow versus a dingy, beaten up powdered blue, and it looks horrific. And for some weeks, people who have various forms of color blindness, they can't see anything that's going on, and it's just perfect.
Denny's not kidding. Bortles in the mustard Jaguars color rush. I'm not kidding on this.
I want the graphic tattooed on my bicep.
I'm not being ironic when I say this. I'm not trying to be a hipster. It's genuinely iconic. Bortles in the mustard color rush uniform.
I mean, you can see in your mind's eye, you can see Derrick Henry running for 250 yards in those games, right?
Bortles, 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. Oh, right. So good.
The Jags having zero interest in tackling him. I mean, literally running away from Derrick Henry as he's barreling down the field. But yeah, I do. I'm going to miss some of this game, some of this Commanders-Packers game. 2 good teams, 2 contenders, and that stinks. That stinks. Give me my bad teams. Like our fathers and our forefathers before them, they were watching terrible Thursday night games throughout the decades, and now we have a good one. I don't like it.
Hear me out. What if the schedule makers know that these aren't actually good teams?
No, don't wish this evil upon us.
They're fake good. They're fake good. What if they seem to be pretty good? And we talked about that on Tuesday. We'll break it down on the website. We'll have every player written up in a blurb Thursday evening. But we begin in Cincinnati, Ohio, the banks of the Ohio River. The Bengals are looking to move on from their annual Week 1 no-show against the Jags team that barely had to show up to win their opener against the Panthers. The books are holding steady, installing the Bengals as somewhere around 3 to 4 point home favorites, Kyle. The Bengals were the more curious Week 1 tale I wrote in my script that I'm reading word by word. But the Jags remain where the intrigue is. Namely, this backfield and Travis Hunter. With the wideout, what do you think we can expect moving forward for Hunter? Used very short to intermediate, 6 of 8 targets, all short. They claim he's going to play more on defense this week. Denny talked about on Tuesday. What do you say on Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, I liked that they tried to get him involved right out of the gates. And I always thought, this was one of my big sticking points in the summer, was the entire project of the Jacksonville Jaguars right now is to save Trevor Lawrence's career, which is strange because he signed a massive extension. You would think that one would come after the other, and yet they are tied to him for a long time, and they need to make him work, and they spend the number 2 overall pick on someone who plays in Week 1 essentially exclusively wide receiver. I think he played 6 defensive snaps.
It was 6. It might be 8 now. You know how it goes.
I was going to say, I think it'll also increase this week, just as they said. You don't, as much as I liked him as a wide receiver, you took him number 2 to play both positions. That is also empirically true. But they came out, they put him almost exclusively in the slot, which is something that literally never almost happened when he was in his final season at Colorado. They threw a bunch of screens to him, which again, really did not happen as a proportion of his overall targets in his final season at Colorado. They made him, I don't see the focal point of the offense because Brian Thomas Jr., despite having a poor stat line, was still involved. But it does strike me as a team that can very comfortably be projected as 2 pass catchers, especially 2 wide receivers who see the vast majority of the targets and very little going on behind them, much like we've seen like A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. And they also have Dallas Goedert, who occasionally pops up for big games, but can just be left in the dust other games. I kind of think it's how the tight end room is going to be here. maybe, like you said, we'll get some Brenton Strange stuff going on every now and then. But the point of this entire offense is to get it to the wide receivers. And from that perspective, I'm very encouraged with what I saw in terms of if I drafted Hunter, if I drafted Brian Thomas in week 1. Pat, you wrote up this game in terms of the blurbs last week, and it was just like the weird. It was the longest play I've ever like. They don't. The NFL is very fortunate with these kinds of things. Also, they just build it. Obviously, just literally always build indoor stadiums. Just a very weird game script against a completely deflated opponent in a game that was very stunted in terms of its pacing. The fact that they exclusively tried to get it to their wide receivers makes me think that if Trevor Lawrence turns it around, if this offense can look more explosive, we'll get good games going forward. And like this would be the kind of spot if the Bengals can hold up their end of the bargain, which they did not do in week 1.
Yeah, that was my take on this Jaguars game in week 1. Just wholly inconclusive. The hour lightning delay, 20-3 Jags at halftime, Panthers in disarray. You just kind of, even though it was a good game, you kind of throw it in the trash and move on. Hopefully, Kyle, it's not a bad sign that it needed to be screens to Travis Hunter. Yeah. But maybe there's a little bit of like, we don't quite know how to get him the ball, so we're going to do this. But it's way too early to say something like that. And we're just going to see what happens with Travis Hunter moving forward. Denny, we're going to see what happens with the Bengals moving forward. We just take it for granted they're going to stink early in the regular season. Unlike last year where they lost to Jacoby Brissett's Patriots, they did actually win this game in week 1 against the Browns. So they were awful. Was there anything of actual concern in the data?
Play volume was not there. Only 52 offensive plays for Cincinnati. It was the 4th fewest on the week. They were not pass heavy. They were only 3% over their expected pass rate. That was 16th on the week. You look at like targets per route run, like Chase was at 19%, which is well below where he was last year, the year before. T. Higgins at 15%. It was ugly, like really, really ugly. I'm not actually as a heavy Burrow and Chase drafter. I wish they would have just lost. I think they deserve to lose.
They did,
and so these guys played in the preseason in hopes of ramping them up and getting them ready for September, and they looked like they were ready to just destroy the league. And they come out and do nothing. So shout out to the Bengals, same old Bengals. 26-point total for the Bengals here, implied total. So you're still playing them. Hopefully they don't suck.
Yeah, Denny sounds totally defeated with the Bengals already.
It's actually like a devastating blowout last week. I actually, guys, I thought for sure, I was covering my game, whatever it was. I thought for sure, well, Burrow went down, and Chase got hurt. Like there was no doubt in my mind, because guess what? They got 7 yards. They gained 7 yards in the second half last week.
Not in a sprint.
So I thought, well, the only explanation is either a comet hit Cincinnati or Cleveland or whatever it is, or they got hurt.
They were in Cleveland, by the way. So a dinosaur killing asteroid.
Well, I was going to say, if a big enough comet hit Cincinnati, you still could have taken care of them in Cleveland.
So yeah, that's true, Denny. So we'll see on the Bengals. This is just what they do. For now, I'm not worried, even though Denny is. Denny weighed in on Travis Etienne on Tuesday, Kyle. I think you just got to put him in the top 20. Like, you can't unsee what happened. They saw it. The next day, they were like, yeah, trade Tank Bigsby. Like, we're good to go. With Travis as the lead back. I've got him, I think, as the RB16 this week. Too hasty. One game, but you have to react after week 1. It looks like Travis Etienne's backfield, and it looks like a very, very profitable fantasy role.
It's maybe like a touch high for my liking, but I'm generally in the same direction as you are. When you go out and you look elite and you get most of the work, and the guy who got the second most work in the team then trades away, that is a very clear vote of confidence. And I will say also probably the backups in Bashal Tutin and LaQuint Allen, but it also cannot be understated how much of a vote of confidence that is in Etienne. The one thing I think will be an interesting development to watch going forward is Etienne's always been a guy who wears down throughout the season. This is from Fantasy Points as Ryan Heath, but it illustrates the point better than I could have made it. Yards per carry over the past 2 years for Travis Etienne by month. September, 4.4. Pretty good number. October, 3.6. November, 3.4. December, 3.8. Jags probably haven't played much in January, if I'm being honest, so don't really need to include that. So to me, this is something that both bears itself in, it's a very basic stat, but bears itself in the stats and the film. He's a guy who just gets banged up easily and doesn't recover gracefully from it over the second half, really over anything in the first month of the season. But for week 2, that is not of our concern. I agree. He's a top 20 running back. We could quibble about 16 versus 19, but you're right.
Yeah, basically the point is you never want to overreact in week one, but you do have to react. And some things you have to react very strongly to. And there's just
the Jags literally reacted strongly.
Exactly.
Not a ton of important roster moves get made in week one, and they made one of the only ones.
Yeah, there's no counter argument to he's the clear-cut RB1, like far and away.
Top 20. Isn't he better than that?
I said RB16.
16. Okay.
Yeah, RB16. Kyle said that was too high, though.
I said 18 or 19. It's 3 spots.
I was going to say 12.
12. So Denny's a full-blown ETN truther, huh? Yeah. Well, real quick, we don't really have time to do this, but we're going to do this. Travis Eitenne, RB16, or Breece Hall, RB14, Denny Carter.
Oh, Breece easily. Grow up. Be an adult.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. James Conner or ETN? I'm going to get Conner lower, actually.
What? Wait, Denny, which one did you go with there?
Conner over ETN? What? We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. Real quick, do you guys think Noah Fant's ahead of Mike Gesicki? It doesn't matter at all. But
who cares? That's the answer. Is who cares? I think he might be, but you cannot in any circumstance play him.
Can I just share something about Fant? He was targeted on 40% of his routes this past week.
You know what that tells me? He had to have run about 10 routes because I think he had 4 or 5 targets, so he probably ran 10 routes.
That was it's not going to hold up. It's not going to be sustainable.
Then he had James Conner ahead of Travis Eitenne. Huh?
What's wrong with James?
We'll litigate this later. The Bears and Lions were 2 of week one's most disappointing teams. 2 of the most. The most, of course, was the Bengals. The Lions never showed up in Green Bay, and the Bears disappeared late against the Vikings. Denny, Detroit's week one underperformance was ominous in the context of Ben Johnson's departure. About how worried should we actually be? They're back in Ford Field, the fast track. One bad game from one really good team the past 2 years. How worried are you?
4.3 air yards per attempt for Jared Goff in this game, in last week's game. That's concerning. I should say it's concerning for me, a JMO guy. It shouldn't be concerning to Amon-Ra St. Brown drafters, Laporta drafters, and Gibbs drafters. Gibbs, by the way.
That's crazy. All the guy who earns targets, they're all having no issues with earning targets. But the one guy who never earns targets, he can't earn targets.
Shout out to Gibbs for 10 catches and 30-some yards last year.
31 yards, 3.1 yards per catch, which would be really very bad yards per carry. It's a catastrophic yards per
I
catch.
have no idea how that happened. So there's some concern here. I will say that the Lions were trying to be run heavy. They were 4% below their expected pass rate last week. They didn't have much in the way of neutral game script against Green Bay, but when they did, they ran the ball at a 60% clip, which is very high. So I know there were 43 dropbacks for Goff, but that doesn't really tell you the whole story here. They're going to try to establish it here against a suspect Bears rush defense, and I think that puts David Montgomery very much in play. I know it stunk last week, but I think you stick with him.
I think that really should be the plan too. And whatever. God was for some reason trying to humble the Lions after the past 2 years. Put them outdoors in week one. Remind them, they're only a dome team. They can't handle even in September. They can't. Handle
a very nice day in Green Bay.
It did look lovely. I'll be honest with you. Kind of concerning, but for now, I got my JMO blinders on. Everything is fine. Kyle, none of us have our Caleb Williams blinders on. That was one game. I know some people are trying to data, retro engineer this one. It actually was mostly fine. It was not fine.
Not me.
It was one of the most concerning performances I've ever seen. Just cannot accurately throw the ball. Denny broke it down on Tuesday, but what can we say about him? And what can we say about his wideouts in the interim? Rome Odunze looked like he was trying to break out, and Caleb Williams looked like he was throwing the ball 10 feet over his head.
Yeah, I won't belabor the stats because Denny kind of nailed them on the Tuesday show. But just in terms of how PFF charts accurate throws, as Denny pointed out, Caleb was terrible. He was just shy of the worst in the league in week one. And he was a bottom feeder in that stat as well. Just accuracy rate is what they call it. It's very self-explanatory. He was a bottom feeder in that last year as well. This is something that I don't think Ben Johnson can change. He
can't pass. He can't throw. I
don't mean to be mean, but the guy is not that accurate. The one thing, a sort of combo of different things I think Bears fans can hang their hats on now until he hopefully fixes the accuracy issues, is he had an extremely strong 10% pressure to sack rate, meaning that he avoided sacks when under pressure extremely well. And that was a massive bugaboo for him last year. It was maybe even like he didn't turn the ball over a lot. He actually was not an interceptions guy. And in the middle of the season, they manufactured a lot of easy.
Because they couldn't catch the interceptions. But
no, that's probably a little correct. I mean, look, I was trying to be nice, but if you want to bury him, I'm here for it.
The interceptions were off target.
Yeah. I mean, his catchable ball rate was like bottom of the barrel last year.
Yeah, it was, if I remember correctly, it was 41st out of 46 quarterbacks. And the guys below him on the list are, I mean, most of them probably are not starting right now. But he also took a ton of sacks last year, was nearly like a record-setting sack taker, and was the opposite in week 1. And also the flip side of that was when he was under pressure, he was scrambling, and he looked really good when he was scrambling. Obviously, he gets in the end zone. So if he can not throw interceptions, not take sacks, and scramble very well, which I'm saying he did all of those very well in week 1, it will paper over the very inconsistent throwing.
Only to a point. If you can't throw, it's going to be...
No, I mean, I think this is the Justin Fields thesis, is that But to be fair, Justin Fields put up a boatload of points in week 1, and he also didn't need to do it exclusively rushing. He had some short rushing touchdowns. Also, Caleb gets in the end zone rushing. But there's a reason Justin Fields is in his 3rd team in 3 seasons, is because the accuracy was so ceiling limiting and sometimes so floor dropping that it didn't matter that he can be a great runner. And Caleb is not the same runner as Fields. He's a good runner. I think he
looked jet packed up in week 1. I really don't know what that was all about.
I think, my point on all the positive Caleb stuff after all the negative Caleb stuff is hopefully that stuff buys him time to get more accurate, which the Fields never really seem to acquire that accuracy, but you would hope Caleb can. In terms of the receivers, I think the only playable one right now is Rome, because he was clearly the top target earner. They really installed him in more of a, we need to get you the ball. We're not having you run 9 routes the entire game. That was a little more DJ Moore, another thing Denny pointed out on Tuesday's show. So if you're not going to be the team's focal point as a pass catcher, you're an ancillary piece for a really inaccurate quarterback, I don't think you're hardly playable. I don't know where you had DJ Moore ranked this week, Pat, but
outside the top 36.
Okay, that's what I was going to say too. So
bit of an overreaction maybe, but by the way, is it over for Colston Loveland, you guys?
I mean, as a rookie tight end, I like drafting Colston Loveland, keeping in mind that I'm hoping he hits in weeks 8, 10, 11. This will take time, and week 1 was a clear confirmation that it will take time. He's not playable right now.
I feel like the first Bear I noticed was Cole Kmet. I love Cole Kmet, Joe. I guess it's Troy Aikman, of course. We talked the whole pregame production meeting. They talked about Cole Kmet. All right, most obvious thing ever, of course. Then of course they still love Cole Kmet. Denny, I don't think they love DeAndre Swift, but hard to really poke any holes in his fantasy case right now. He played 80% of the snaps. He actually did not reach 80% last year. Of course, he didn't do anything with it. But this is what peak RB21 performance looks like, correct?
Yeah. Like Javonte Williams, boring and bad. Swift he's terrible. But here's the thing about the Bears backfield. It could change as early as this week. Ben Johnson said after the game, he said, quote, "I need to call more running plays so that we get Kyle Monangai in the game a little more." He said that's something EB, the offensive coordinator,
Eric Bieniemy,
that's something EB and I have talked about, making sure Monangai has more carries going forward. So I'm not saying that it's like a takeover week for Monangai, but this thing where DeAndre Swift is locked in to 18 to 20 plus touches, that might have been a 1 week blip. He was terrible. He was really bad efficiency wise.
Producer Adam shared a quote. This is his signature. Our friend Drew Dinsick said earlier today, it's like he has a magnet in his pads to run into the back of his offensive lineman. And
how is that?
It's been the case everywhere he's gone to.
It's incredible. He's never improved.
No, he's a heat-seeking missile for the pads of his offensive linemen. The Kansas City Chiefs and Eagles rematch last year's Super Bowl, this time in Kansas City, Missouri, but the home team operating as modest underdogs. A lot of disrespect for Patrick Mahomes. We're upset about that. Both sides are undermanned, with neither Xavier Worthy nor Dallas Goedert likely to play, Kyle. But with 9 days to game plan after losing in Brazil, how do we think the Chiefs' targets will shake out? Is Tyquan Thornton a thing? And also, I guess Xavier Worthy could play. I'm assuming.
I know that's the note we have to make, is that he is supposedly practicing on Thursday. My guess it would just a phenomenally light practice just to get him out there and keep him in rhythm. And that doesn't guarantee in any capacity that he plays in week 1. But It's at least worth noting, like in the same way last week, I said that we have to consider that what if JCM is the only between tackles back, they healthy scratch Chris Rodriguez? That ends up being what happens. Just a reminder, you should be checking inactives on Sunday and Monday if we end up having Xavier Worthy out there. I'm going to talk about it as if he's not. I do think Travis Kelce has to be more involved. I'll be at the forefront of saying he is almost certainly old and washed. For him to go out and see fewer targets than Juju Smith-Schuster, also old and washed, I think that is untenable for the Chiefs. Should Travis Kelce be the team's number one receiver, even over Hollywood Brown? Probably not. Hollywood last week earns 16 targets, catches 10, doesn't even get to 100 yards, but goes for 99 yards. He is their team's number one receiver right now. Even if Xavier Worthy's back for this coming game, I would guess his snaps are very limited. Hollywood's probably still playable as a wide receiver 3 in that instance. If he's gone, you have to treat the guy who just saw 16 targets as a fantasy wide receiver 2.
Can someone say Tyquan Thornton's a thing? Can someone just do this for me?
No. What do you mean by thing? Is this game? Is it?
I took a bit of a ranking stand. I have him like wide receiver 52. Like
he ran
basically
81% of the routes. He was out there as much as any starting wide receiver is. He also saw 41% of the air yards. He was almost never targeted though. He basically he's going to get 2 or 3 shot plays a game. You really hope Mahomes, who's been really struggling on his deep throws as of like the past 2 years.
It's because the players are bad. Denny, you got anything better than Kyle?
No, Thornton is a boom bust, like wide receiver 4 or 5. Who was that guy who used to run all the routes for the Chiefs and never?
Justin Watson, MVS,
JW
Watson,
JW.
So, but
Denny,
Thornton,
you won't believe this.
Watson.
Justin Watson is going to make an appearance later in this show. It's sickening, but I'm not kidding.
You should be kidding about that. I pray you're kidding. Denny, the Eagles were a week 1 fantasy stink bomb. I wrote, despite beating the Cowboys. What's the concern level? Concern is the theme of the show because we get very scared and anxious after week 1. What's the concern level with AJ Brown? 1 target. It came at the 58-minute mark of the game. Devontae Smith was invisible as he does like every other game. Dallas Goedert's likely out this week, so they should bounce back. They're playing the Chiefs. I was concerned after seeing that. Are you concerned at all?
A little, but with AJ Brown, you can tell by the body language when he wants to play and when he doesn't want to play. And he really just didn't feel like playing last week. As soon as it was clear that they were going to go run heavy, and they were very run heavy against the Cowboys, 36% neutral pass rate against Dallas, that AJ Brown was like, well, I guess I'm not part of the offense then. I'm going to go sit on the bench and read my book. What are you going to do? So hopefully this game pushes the Eagles a little more. I mean, you look back at how the Eagles beat the Chiefs last year, and it actually is not great for the AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Eagles were 14% under their expected pass rate in that game. Really super run heavy, which is weird because the Chiefs' run defense was good last year. It was very good in week 1. Your hope here is that Kansas City gets out to something of a lead and forces Jalen Hurts to drop back. But truly, Goddard being out means that Smith and Brown should see something of a boost in targets.
The Chiefs actually did a really good job of containing Saquon Barkley in the Super Bowl. It's like the only thing they did well. The Eagles should pass more this week. Just kind of feel like they don't do that, though, is maybe their thing. Jahan Dotson.
When they have to, really.
Jahan Dotson in the mix, by the way. He caught some passes even last week. If Dallas Goedert's out, I mean, someone's got to get this ball.
Right.
All right, mute his mic. I'll take the show from here.
I know Denny thinks it's Grant Calcaterra.
I can't believe you're talking about Dotson.
Well, you got to say the name at least. You got to say the name. Yeah,
all right, Dotson. We can move on.
There you go. All right, Kyle, anything to glean from the Chiefs' week 1 backfield usage? We had a question in our Monday Q&A, basically, like, is it over for Isaiah Pacheco? You kind of said yes, actually.
I mean, in the short term, I don't see how you don't consider it over. Kareem Hunt played 12 of 14 third down snaps and 5 of 5 snaps with 2 or few yards to go. Like, he was the short yardage back and the passing downs back. The bad news is the Chiefs like to throw in short yardage situations, and they don't need to throw to their running back. Specifically, Kareem Hunt is like not a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He's there primarily for pass pro because he's trusted in that capacity. So he's not really fantasy relevant, but he's doing more than enough in terms of what snaps he plays on to make Isaiah Pacheco also completely fantasy irrelevant. So I think it's just a holding pattern. Pacheco could play his way into a larger role, I think, but they trust Kareem Hunt for these things. They're not looking for explosive running potential when they play him on 3rd and 15 for pass pro. That's not the point of him being out there. They're not also looking for explosive running potential when they play him on 3rd and 1. They need 1 yard, and he actually is a good success rate runner. He gets 2 yards when you ask him to get 2 yards. He does not get 4 when you need 4 yards, but that's not the point of him being out there. So I think this backfield is just a complete stay away right now.
And Bashard, I'm keeping I kept Bashard Smith on some 12-team league rosters this
Dude,
week.
I victory lapped so hard when Eli Mitchell was healthy scratched. And buddy, the 0 hurt all the same.
The pregame victory lap is always a bit tough.
Yeah.
It's always a bit tough.
It's always the Nick Young shoot your shot and turn around and boy,
it was a Friday night. Maybe you had already imbibed a little, and you kind of got to let that one fly.
It's possible.
We need someone to Photoshop Kyle's face on the Nick Young meme.
We do. We absolutely do. The Bills come off their week 1 Houdini act as touchdown road favorites against the Jets, because why wouldn't they be? The Jets absolutely love to be touchdown home underdogs. While Buffalo is riding high, though, Denny, Gangrene is smarting from a narrow loss. Keon Coleman had the best Buffalo week 1 box score, but was it Fool's Gold? Some other fantasy site with some really, really good analysts, I should say, is saying Keon Coleman had a 0% win rate on his routes. Seems a bit tough since he caught 8 passes. You would think maybe at least one of those was a win. But maybe it could be a deceiving box scores where I'm going. But he's the kind of guy who's not going to ever separate a ton. How do we feel about Keon Coleman after leading the Bills in week 1 receiving, Denny Carter?
Real quick about that Sunday night comeback on NBC. The next morning, I walked my daughter to the bus stop, and at the bus stop there is the world's biggest Ravens fan, a little boy who I'm always talking ball.
You foreshadowed this last week, I think. You told us about the impending doom he was facing. Maybe you didn't phrase it that way, but we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, and he knew, and he knows ball. He knows the team. So I come up to him and I was like, "Man, I'm sorry, man," and he immediately starts like getting upset. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. We can talk about something else. We could, let's not the amazing weather. Where's the bus, by the way? It's late. 5 minutes past." So anyway, let's
talk about kid. You know anything about politics? Want to about religion? Let's talk about we can talk about whatever you want.
Anything but the Ravens blowing a 4th quarter lead again.
Well, tell them about Keon Coleman. Stunting all over the Ravens.
I mean, look, I tend to when you tell me that stat 0% win rate, I'm like, yeah, of course, because Coleman stinks. But he was targeted on 26% of his routes against the Ravens. That was 17% last year, so a huge jump. And then you have Josh Palmer being targeted on 25% of his routes against Baltimore. Shakir was at 17% with a weird ADOT of 11. Like, I don't know what was going on with how they were using guys. But what really happened is the perfect game script played out for a Keon Coleman nuke game. And so you get that. You get drop back volume goes crazy. Josh Allen's pushing it downfield. You're not going to get that very often from a good Bills team, right? You're not going to get it this week. So just pump the brakes a little bit. Be a little bit careful on Coleman.
Denny, you're so right. It was basically Gabe Davis in the divisional round game script is what happened. Right. It was the same game script as the 4-touchdown game. All I will say that he's going to be a really volatile guy because, kidding aside, he does not separate. You had to make tight window throws to Keon Coleman, but it dovetailed with the summer analysis. Joe Buscaglia, who we all take as gospel in the Bills because he's earned that, said he's going to lead in everything, and then he led in everything in week 1. So Keon Coleman, we want more data points, but 1 week, one really good return for Mr. Keon Coleman. Kyle, any update on the Brees Assance? He was definitely the Jets' lead back. He was by far their best back against the Steelers. What are we looking at heading into week 2?
Good news is this was, for my money, easily the best Brees has looked. Again, it's one game. He's had other good games, but it was also kind of by the numbers, the best he's looked since his rookie season, which was a very short season. He finished top 5 in the week in rush yards over expected per carry, PFF rushing grade, yards after contact per carry, especially playing alongside Justin Fields. That's kind of what you would expect from an explosive running back between the tackles, is for the Justin Fields effect to really juice his numbers. I have to give some sort of negative pushback on this from my own front, is he had just 2 red zone carries compared to 7 for the combined Justin Fields and Braylon Allen, and only a 32% route rate, which is really poor. One final pushback on the pushback is that he was actually in on passing plays a lot, but he was in on pass pro. They like specifically held him back for pass protection despite being on the field more than almost any other running back in week 1. To me, I would expect that to be probably a matchup versus a very strong Steelers pass rush kind of specific matchup thing. I hope, I'm coping a little bit. I hope that's what it was for. But also, he truly was in for pass pro at a rate that truly no other running back does over the full course of a season. Even if he goes to Kyron Williams or like last year, Javonte Williams levels of pass protection rates, it would still be better than what we saw in week 1. So I think the passing game usage is almost certain to go up. The Jets also just did not pass much at all. That'll probably be a feature of them, but they dropped back like 20 or 25 times. Hopefully that at least pushes towards 30 in some games, and hopefully Brees isn't asked to do as much pass pro, which I think is going to be true. It's still a slight committee where he's losing some high value touches, but he looks so good that you can survive a committee and still have him be a great pick where you spent on him, especially at the end of the summer when the Jets started really falling.
I think we saw what we wanted from Brees in week 1. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube and it looks like I'm crying, something is in my eye and I put in an eye drop. Denny, I could put you on the spot about Keon Coleman. Tell us about the rest of this Bills skill core if you have any leftover thoughts from your Bills receiver breakdown. Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, Dalton Kincaid, a lot of people in this skill group.
So Shakir traditionally, and I actually wrote about this in a piece in the offseason, traditionally he commands targets at a very high rate against zone defense and never against man defense. And the Jets should play more zone than the Bills faced last week against the Ravens. That should be good for him. I'm not panicking too much. Like I said, I just think it played out perfectly for Keon Coleman in week 1. So you're still playing Shakir in 12-team leagues, especially in PPR. And I think you can get away, with what's the tight end's name?
Dalton Kincaid.
Couldn't remember it for some reason. I kept thinking
hard to remember names of players who have, of course, never been good.
Yes, and we're still waiting for that second good game, but it could come. It could come as soon as this week. I mean, he got away with it last week with the touchdown, but he was involved enough, so I think you can maybe start him as a streamer.
By the way, speaking of getting away with it, the Jets got away with Garrett Wilson being their only viable pass catcher. I thought he could maybe be a dark horse to lead the league in targets. That's probably a stretch still, but they have one good pass catcher. They executed the plan to perfection against the Steelers. It's going to be harder against the Bills probably, but so far, so good on Garrett Wilson. The Chargers of Los Angeles, they do indeed play there apparently. A return from the Southern Hemisphere where they were playing last week as field goal home favorites against the Raiders team whose fans will take over SoFi Stadium on Sunday. I'm legally obligated to mention when opposing fans take over SoFi Stadium, which is, of course, every game, whether it is the Rams or the Chargers. Kyle, we've seen this movie with Justin Herbert before. A huge game. Oh, yeah, great. We won our best game in week 1 is what we want from our quarterback that everyone says is the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the league. Then he disappears again. Any reason to think this year might be different? It looked and felt great in week 1, I will admit. Justin Herbert, I frankly do want to be a thing. This time it counts, ?
Yeah, I mean, last year, especially after the first month of the season, we saw the Chargers fully commit to a passing first approach. Part of that was J.K. Dobbins wearing down and eventually getting hurt, and Gus Edwards getting hurt as well, and just didn't really look like the Gus they signed from Baltimore at any point. But part of that, I think, is always the Justin Herbert is attempts are a QB stat type of player, and somehow life finds a way to get him more attempts, even when maybe they don't want to. They wanted to last week. They led the NFL with a 15% pass rate over expected. It was shocking to see them come out very first down in the game, throwing play. Then they get the first down because it's a good chunk play, another throwing play. Like they continue to press that advantage. And it didn't seem like they were just seeing something that like, oh, on this specific play that they thought they could continue to throw the football. They had 3 or more receivers on the field on 88% of their play on their passing plays specifically last week. That was a 77% rate last year, an 11% increase in how often they were putting 3 or 4 plus wide receivers on the field. This seems like a very structural thing they're attempting to do. And I like this, you can't factor this in terms of how you actually project the game going forward. But after the game, Jim Harbaugh comes out and says, like, did you see that hit Justin Herbert took? It would have killed a lesser man. He said the hit Justin Herbert took would have killed a lesser man. And he talked about him as like one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in the offseason. He has such an unwavering faith in Justin Herbert. Even when Justin Herbert single-handedly blows it in the playoffs against a completely deflated Texans team, he does not care.
More interceptions against the Texans than he had all season.
Oh, hey, that speaks very highly of his entire season until that point.
I mean, it is per EPA the worst quarterback outing in history.
Yeah, it was the game mattered, so then he didn't play well. It's kind of simple.
Hey, look, if that was the game that mattered and all the games before it didn't matter, I've got good news. This Las Vegas game certainly doesn't matter. If that's the rule, this qualifies as a doesn't matter game. I think you show me, honestly, I would probably rank Herbert as QB1, especially because we also saw last year, and they talked about it in the offseason, they want Herbert to run more too, which if you can just get from like 200 to 300 to like 300 to 400 rushing yards in a season, get from 2 touchdowns to 4 touchdowns, that's also really going to help his fantasy numbers. And they were so committed to the pass in week 1 that I think he has to be considered a QB1. I do believe there will be games where they go back to establishing it. I don't know if this is really one of them. We also saw the Patriots take to the air for almost the entirety of their 4 quarters versus the Raiders as well. It seems like that could be an indication that the Raiders are a team you target through the air. The Chargers obviously showed a propensity to do that in week 1. I have really talked myself into, until a game matters, we are ranking Herbert as a QB1.
I have him ranked as a QB1. And to speak to how different they're starting off the offense this year, he had 318 yards in Brazil. That was 173 more than he averaged in 4 games last September. So he was averaging like under 150 yards, like totally nuts. So totally different approach. That's despite having a first-round running back, Denny. Both Ashton Jeanty of Vegas and Amarian Hampton looked kind of big and slow in their NFL debuts. There's really no other way to put it. The usage, though, was very hard to argue with both backs. How are we feeling after 1 game for our first-round running backs, Ashton Jeanty and Amarian Hampton?
They are big and slow, I can confirm. Yeah, I mean, you're feeling okay about Hampton, about both of them, but, talking about Hampton, he had handled 15 of the Chargers' 16 running back rushing attempts in week 1. He logged 25 pass routes on 45 dropbacks for Justin Herbert. Najee Harris only ran 6 routes. Hampton saw just 2 targets, but I mean, it's not a hateful profile overall. I did write up Hampton in the regression files this week because the role is enough so that I think he can get there. And also, you really have to factor in that Kansas City's front 7 is one of the best rushing defenses in the league, if not the best. I think Greg Roman kind of held his nose and was like, all right, fine. We'll drop back. We'll sling it. And Kyle mentioned that. So Hampton should be fine.
Yeah, it's too early. And Ashton Jeanty,
yeah,
man, they were both so bad from rush yards over expected perspective, but also they were making their NFL debuts. They will adjust. There's a reason they're first round picks.
Jeanty handled 19 of 22 running back carries for the Raiders. He was hit a half yard behind the line of scrimmage on average. So just had nowhere to run, but did see the goal line work, punched one in. I can't get over how bad he looked, man. I don't know.
It wasn't what we wanted to see, but there's a lot more to see. So we'll just take it week by week with our young running backs. Kyle, the Raiders still just a 2-man skill core with Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. A lot of role players caught 2 to 3 passes last week, but they just looked like that, role players. Is it Bowers, Jacoby, and no one else when it comes to 12-team redraft fantasy?
Yeah, for sure. We saw basically what we expected in terms of route distribution. Trey Tucker operated as the clear wide receiver 2, and Dante Thornton was the clear wide receiver 3, with Jack Bech barely running any routes. He did get a decent per route target rate. That's what happens when you don't run a lot of routes and your team schemes up 1 or 2 looks for you. And Dante Thornton and Trey Tucker are not the consistent fantasy plays that you can rely on. They're both essentially just boom bust deep threats on a team that has superstar target hog tight end Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, who played really well in week 1, 30% target share, just shy of 18 PPR points. And the Raiders passed a lot, 3rd in pass rate over expected. So assuming Bowers plays, which I think Pete Carroll said within the past hour that Bowers is approaching week 2 as if he's going to play. That is not a guarantee that he does.
Because I told you, Kyle, Pete,
I know.
He's not. Pete would, if you have a hangnail, you won't practice on Wednesday. Then you're full on. Then you go full for some reason on Thursday. Then you're limited on Friday.
Yeah.
This is like the Pete. Miserable. This is like the Pete staple.
So another one. Keep it locked to Rotoworld for that. Brock Bowers was supposedly pushing to get back into the game after he left with the knee injury. I hope he plays because I drafted a lot of him. And if he plays, you are obviously starting him.
He's going to play.
I think so.
He's going to play, and we're going to move on. Smarting from their Sunday night embarrassment. That kid at the bus stop. Denny, did he cry?
Almost. Are you saying that I mentioned him on Tuesday as well?
No, Pat,
somewhere.
Denny, you mentioned him before last week's show, I think. I know I've heard about this kid before.
Yeah, you brought him up. I'm just praying you did not make him cry.
He's my guy, and
he's your guy. Don't make him cry.
I want the Ravens to not choke once so that I can talk to this kid and we can be happy.
Well, that's not going to happen. So, it happened Sunday against the Bills. Now the Ravens roll into Cleveland as a mammoth road favorites. Denny, almost 2 touchdowns. Yeah. Kyle already waxed poetic more than enough on Harold Fannin. He's not allowed to talk about Harold Fannin. But it's your turn to inject either some sanity or further hysteria into the Fannin narrative. He's the tight end what going forward, Denny?
We're getting totally hysterical. He's a must start in 12-team leagues.
Let's go, Denny.
All right, whatever. Talk.
Look, Cleveland, 70% neutral pass rate in week 1. That's crazy. And we're going to see that again this week against Baltimore. He was targeted on 31% of his routes, averaged 6.2 air yards per target. As it says in my notes, LFG.
So does it mean is it over for Njoku then? I mean, what does this mean?
It's bad. It's real bad for Njoku.
I'll say
on the top 12.
I don't think it's he's still at least in contention for top 12 because he ran, I think, north of 80% of the routes. He played a traditional tight end role, and it was Fannin that played everything else. He did all these other things. The only, I guess, sort of mitigating factor to, Njoku ran a bunch of routes is one of these guys you want to target 8 times a game in the shallow area, and the other one is David Njoku, who's really good, but Harold Fannin might already be better. The fact that he out-targeted him week 1, outproduced him, he probably is. So
just real quick, Cleveland used 2 tight end sets 50% of the time last week. That's way different than what we're used to seeing from a fancy offense. They booted Deontay Johnson in August, and they said we're running with Fannin. So that's what they're doing here.
By the way, one reason it's not a huge concern for David Njoku is that Harold Fannin is, of course, not a tight end, but an H-back. No further comment there from you guys on that one. Kyle, Zay Flowers erupted against the Bills, while Mark Andrews, as he absolutely loves to do, just didn't show up to the stadium. Which stat line do you think will prove more representative going forward? By the way, I said this game was in Cleveland. It's in Baltimore. But yeah, Zay good, Andrews horrifying. Which is more representative?
I think they're both probably representative in that, look, I cape for Andrews because he played pretty well at the end of last year. I think maybe the one thing that I'll start with Andrews that hopefully changes, but they just played him as a traditional inline tight end in week 1. He ran the majority, I think over 60% of his routes from an inline position. Yeah. He's typically in the 20 to 25s. He is functionally a big slot receiver. He's kind of the comp for Brock Bowers. We're Brock Bowers has tight end designation. You just treat him like Amon-Ra St. Brown.
The key to being a tight end, of course, is not.
Don't do it. Don't be a tight end, especially more recently. Back in the day, you had your Gronks and your Kelseys, and that doesn't really seem like we have much of that archetype right now, which is fine. I love my Brock Bowers and I love my Harold Fannins. Mark Andrews was not used like a Harold Fannin, was not used like a Brock Bowers, which is what he's done throughout his entire career. And the Ravens went from being a base 12 personnel team when they passed to being maybe not quite perfectly normal 11 personnel when they pass, but going from something like 35% to 65% passing out of 11. When you're passing out of 11, that means you have to put Mark Andrews in an inline position. He does not do that. And it did not go well for him in week 1 when he saw 1 target. And on the flip side, I think if they continue to do that, that is how you open up the path for Zay Flowers to be an absolute volume monster. If Mark Andrews is out of the picture because they're playing him out of position, that means Zay Flowers has no competition for targets. It's field stretching Rashad Bateman, who's good at that role, but cannot command high target volumes. Zay Flowers goes out with a 50% target share, 51% of the air yards, ran literally every route. They didn't run a ton of routes because the team ran a lot. But all of this to me says that if what we saw in week 1 persists, Zay Flowers is a total smash. And even if it doesn't, he's probably still a good pick.
Isaiah likely, soon is all I'll say. By the way, there's one real tight end left, George Kittle, and he gets hurt every single week because they make him be a real tight end. Denny, do we start Quinshon Judkins if he plays? It doesn't seem like he's going to play. What's going on with the Browns backfield?
Well, I would say no, because then it'll probably be split up 3 ways talking about the Browns backfield. I would kind of exercise some caution on Dylan Sampson, who caught you look at the box score. What are you talking about? 8 catches for 64 yards. That's a PPR scam if I ever saw one. But Jerome Ford led the backfield with 25 routes. Sampson only logged 15 routes last week. He's targeted 8 of 15. Like that's insane. That's not going to happen again. So I think we can pump the brakes a little bit on Sampson, but I think he's playable in deeper PPR formats if Judkins doesn't play. If Judkins comes back, I don't know what to say about any of these guys. I feel like they're all unplayable.
Especially against a team like the Ravens, but we're going to have a much better defensive performance this week, you would assume. So, yeah, sit tight on that one. By the way, the reason he didn't run more routes is because he just kept catching. Every time they threw him the ball, he didn't need to run extra routes because every time he ran one, he just caught
60% targets per route run. We're going to lock it in for the rest of the season.
We're going to lock it in. We're going to lock in even more to the show when we come right back after this. Sunday night, J.J. McCarthy makes a Sunday Night Football debut at home as the Vikings host Michael Penix Jr. and the Falcons. Coverage of the NFC battle begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
For the audio listeners, Pat goes to town on his eyeball, right?
When it's like Al Michaels eats a steak live on air. The second I'm off camera, I'm itching my eye until it falls out of my head. I don't know what got in this eye. Something.
We're not going to show that, though.
Piece of a stick. Something is in this eyeball. The Falcons and Vikings are this week's most intriguing young quarterback battle. Kyle Dvorchak, J.J. McCarthy, somewhat hilariously, won NFC Player of the Week after playing one good quarter in Chicago. He made like 4 good throws, but it was a really, really good quarter. I will admit the haters were silenced on Twitter.
Forever.
Boy, were we silenced. We really need a bounce back this week.
Yeah, I had to look up how do you delete posts.
Yes. So he silenced the haters extremely. Can we be cautiously optimistic he will actually get home for this Vikings skill core after seeing what was honestly probably jitters those first 3 quarters? He came into his own in that fourth quarter, won a game almost by himself on the road.
Yeah, for McCarthy himself, the way, and Pat, you were in tune with this during the offseason, the way that they called plays makes me think that we've still got progress to be made for him to be a playable fantasy asset. Of course, when you only really have Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, you are always starting those guys. I mean, even when they add Jordan Addison to the mix, you're going to be starting all of them as long as McCarthy doesn't regress from what he looked like in totality in week 1. But negative 7% pass rate over expected, and they threw short of the sticks on average by 3.6 yards. Extremely conservative passing approach, both in the nature of the individual passes and how often they deployed passing. And Jordan Mason ran the ball well, deserves to continue in that role he had in week 1. So to me, I don't think the way they played in week 1 in terms of how they passed and when they passed warrants McCarthy as anything other than like a mid-range QB2. Like
he completed 13 passes. Like it was one of the all-time stranger starts you'll see.
Yeah.
Like what award did he get? Offensive player
NFC Player of the Week. I mean, listen, man. I know everything's broken. Society's broken.
So because he won that because Kevin O'Connell called a great read option in the red zone.
Yeah. Let's be real. Everything's broken.
Kevin O'Connell should have got that award.
It's a farce. It's a complete joke. Things used to matter.
That's
words and actions used to matter.
Crazy. JJ McCarthy was like not even a top 20 quarterback last week.
I know, but man, yeah, he turned it around. It was uncomfortable, like we said, the first 3 quarters. Then he turned it around. We're hoping that's how he looks going forward. Denny, what did we see from the other young quarterback in this game? Michael Penix Jr. in week 1. Yeah. Pass rate over expected, targets distribution, things of that nature.
Yeah. Falcons offense was not as pass heavy as I thought it was. I covered that game, the Bucs Falcons game. They were 22nd in pass rate over expected in week 1, 61% neutral pass rate, which is like in the middle of the league. Only 7% of Penix's throws were beyond 20 yards. That was one of the lower rates in the league. But it was a lot of Drake London. London was targeted on 37% of his routes against Tampa. That's crazy, but also in line with like what we expected, honestly. And then Kyle Pitts, who look, here's what I'll say about Kyle Pitts. He appeared to be less lumbering than usual. Okay, it looked like he was able to actually get the ball and turn upfield and make someone miss, which I have not seen in a long time. He had an ADOT of 5. Give me that, for PPR purposes, and targeted on 21% of his routes. I actually think Pitts is kind of interesting going forward.
Oh, this is good. This feels good.
It's like, you know what happens. Kyle Pitts had one good game. You know what that means? 5 bad games.
I know.
That's kind of
well.
I didn't draft like any of Pitts this year, so I'm victory lapping takes from years ago that were wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it only took 5 years, but Pat was wrong.
It's true. Yeah, after 5 years, half a decade, I've been wrong. Kyle, quickly, is it easy, as simple as saying this is Jordan Mason's backfield? As the leader, because Aaron Jones isn't going anywhere. Jordan Mason, though, was leading this backfield in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it is very clearly Jordan Mason's backfield. Out carries Aaron Jones 15-8. And more importantly, he just didn't give Minnesota any reason to change that split. He beats Aaron Jones cleanly in yards after contact, PFF rush grade, and missed tackles forced per carry. Of course, Aaron Jones has somewhat of a pass catching role, gets in the end zone through the air. But to me, Jones is maybe flirting with RB3-ish numbers. And you could probably squeeze top 24 production out of Jordan Mason. He's just very clearly the number one back. And like a 15-8 split is hardly even 1A, 1B. It's just one and backup.
Yeah. So one game, again, kind of a squirrely game too, but he was kind of keeping them afloat when JJ McCarthy was struggling. They'd put in Jordan Mason and break off a 6 or 7 yard run. So we kind of thought maybe things were headed this direction. They went there in week 1. We'll see where they go in week 2. The Dallas Cowboys return home from putting a scare into the Eagles, who had admittedly got their best player ejected before the game even began, from trying to avoid the same fate against the Giants. Denny, Dak was popping on film in Philly, but didn't have the stats to show for it. Have you found anything encouraging in the more advanced metrics? Are we still excited about your guy, George Pickens?
I feel good about all the Cowboys for several reasons. One, just like high-level reasons, the Dallas defense looked putrid, which we love. And second, the Cowboys had the third fastest offensive pace of the week. So we're talking about lots of play volume here. They'll get there more often than not. Pickens was okay. I mean, he drew the defensive pass interference. He had 20% of the team's air yards, 15.5 air yards per target. That's kind of what you expect. You expect a larger share overall, obviously, and I think he'll get that going forward. Dallas had the 5th highest neutral game script pace, which is what I just mentioned. Passed at a good
right off the tongue.
Yeah, it does. So I think everything aligns for CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 1 overall season, and George Pickens, somewhat boom busty, but I actually think he'll be more consistent than people think after week 1. I know week 1 sucked. Trust me.
I really do think it was the classic, like, the box score stunk, but if you actually watched the game, you came away encouraged.
He's very involved.
Hopefully not famous last words. We're encouraged about that. We were discouraged about the Giants. Russell Wilson probably honestly exceeded our worst expectations, Kyle. Just how negative is the Russell Wilson effect from Malik Neighbors and company right now? He's a week-to-week starter. Like, we know this, but he's starting this week. How negative is it?
I mean, the good news is that Neighbors saw 1/3 of the team's targets and 2/3 of the team's air yards. He is going to be proportionally maybe the most involved wide receiver in the NFL in his team's passing game. And I don't want to say 5 for 71, which is what he had last week, is the floor, because Russ could look worse next week. It'd be weird if his first game as a Giant was his worst, given that we don't think he's very good. At some point, he'll even have a worse game, and then you'll get a 3 for 30 game from Neighbors. Or frankly, Neighbors will get more hurt because he's already a little banged up. But with that being said, you do have a phenomenally high floor when you are 1/3 of your team's targets passing game, and even more of that, 2/3 of the team's air yards based passing game. So he's still a low end wide receiver 1. I think it's more of Russell Wilson limits the ceiling. He doesn't necessarily limit the floor because the targets are the floor.
Malik Neighbors, he's experienced bad quarterback play his entire career. Hopefully he can still even become a mid-range wide receiver 1. Quickly on these backfields, it's Javonte Williams' backfield for the foreseeable future. I don't really know how you could argue with that after week 1, especially with the horrible Miles Sanders giveaway. The only thing I'll say, Jaden Blue's healthy scratch. I don't really think it was a healthy scratch. He barely practiced in August. He was barely practicing like the week before week 1. He wasn't on the injury report. I think that was a healthy scratch by another name, though, and that he could get involved. And to the Giants backfield, Tyrone Tracy, it didn't show up in the box score, but he fumbled. It was a fumble on the interception. Something to keep in mind with Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatteraboo going forward. The Dolphins turned in the worst week 1 performance in recent memory and still find themselves favored for their home opener against the Patriots, Kyle. That's because Drake May and company were just that bad in week 1. I already got Denny's Dolphin spiel on Tuesday. I have really good thoughts on it. So I'll ask you, is there any room for hope here? If you ask the bookmakers, the answer is yes.
Bookmakers are wrong, dude. I mean, so I did conjure up some marginally hopeful stats. The Dolphins were 23rd in yards per play and 23rd in success rate, which is fine. It's not like they did not look like the 23rd best offense in the NFL. They looked like the 32nd best offense, which they were 31st in EPA per play. But a lot of that was they would sustain reasonable drives and then turn it over in opponent territory. And I don't want to say like they won't continue to turn the ball over, but the fact that they sustain, 6, 7, 8 plays up until a bad play, like you don't expect them, maybe you do, but you don't expect them to throw 2 picks in opponent territory every single week. But with that being said, like that's the logical nerd brain. They look like garbage and none of their players want to be there. I don't think this is a good fantasy environment. Like we don't need to kid ourselves.
When you put it, everyone looks bad. Everything looks bad if you remember it. The Dolphins are verging in that territory. I remember Drake May looking quite bad in week 1, Denny. But how bad was he? How good was Kayshon Boutte? As I'm repeating myself, but it spanned 2 coaching staffs, 2 seasons, 2 quarterbacks, because Drake May didn't play last week, week 18, but a 2-game 100-yard streak. How bad was Drake? How good was Kayshon?
All right. So Drake May was not good, but could be good for fantasy. Patriots 9% over their expected pass rate. I don't know how long that'll last. Mike Vrabel's probably
going to end this week. It was literally the first thing he said in his post-game press conference. Like, we got to run more.
He was like, "We're never passing again." Sorry.
He was.
So, okay, here's one highlight from Drake May in week 1. He was the 5th most accurate quarterback on throws between 10 and 20 yards. Okay, so he has that going for him, but he was one of the most inaccurate passers outside the pocket, which I don't really understand, but so it goes. And then Kayshon Boutte, I wrote him up in the regression files. Like Pat said, didn't come out of nowhere. He was 12th in receiving yards and 20th in receiver receptions last year over the final 3 weeks.
Wow.
He dominated air yards over that stretch for New England. So you fast forward to week 1 of this year, team leading 39% of the team's air yards against Vegas. He was targeted on 20% of his routes, which is not great. 76% route rate. Stefan Diggs, there's some discrepancies about like how many routes he ran. I'm finding different things on different sites. They're ramping him up. Let's just say that they're ramping up Diggs. I don't know if they're going to get there this week or week 3 or week 4. But until then, I think Boutte is very interesting as like the de facto wide receiver one for now.
I would say one of my big rankings adjustments I made was I put him on the wide receiver 3-4 borderline, just because, like you said, it didn't come out of nowhere. He actually had a pretty hype-filled offseason. We totally ignored it in fantasy football.
We did.
We didn't want to talk or think about that. But then it happened again, and I think it was something you kind of had to react to, where he's the big-bodied guy. It'll be kind of inconsistent in fantasy. He's a top 40 receiver right now. I think I would say Travion Henderson wasn't great usage, but he did outgain Ramondre Stevenson on the ground. Obviously, he out-caught him. He did not out-snap him, but I think Travion, I think you can run back as a flex this week, especially with Mike Vrabel. Again, literally the first thing he did in his post-game press conference was pledging a run game involvement. I think they've got to be more creative with his passing game usage, though. It's just like really weird little dump-offs. Josh McDaniels needs to do better in that department. The Panthers need to do better in every department, Denny. They were basically as bad as it gets in week 1. While the Cardinals only narrowly skated by the Saints, this is not a good game. But do we maybe see signs of maturing Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. connection last Sunday if you ignore the 97-yard touchdown Kyler missed?
I mean, I have Marvin Harrison in the negative spot in the regression files, so you know how I feel there. He scored the touchdown, which is nice. He had that going for him. Kyle mentioned in our group text that Kyler missed him on an easy 97-yard touchdown for MHJ.
It was so easy. This is not a joke. The Cardinals website basically felt obliged to acknowledge it. They did an article on like how it happened.
Oh my
I'm
God.
not kidding. azcardinals.com has an article, like an oral history basically of how the 97-yard touchdown was.
No.
Yeah.
Oh man, that team is down so bad. I mean, I guess it is good. His target per route run jumped a little bit. So it is good that they're kind of force feeding him, and he's big and muscular now. So he's got that going for him. I mean, you're playing him, whatever.
You're playing him.
Kyle, you're playing him, whatever. Moving on.
Any good news with the Panthers? It was a nice day for Teterow McMillan, but this was too simplistic of a narrative. I was watching this game. I kept thinking, like, man, this does not look like an offense that could afford to trade Adam Thielen. They did.
Dude, I agree.
Any good news for the Panthers out of that really, really bad performance?
Yeah, very awkward, unfortunate timing where they lose Jalen Coker right after trading Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
I think had they lost Jalen Coker to IR, they would not have traded before they traded Thielen. It would have never happened because they really do need that other player. Good news for fantasy. Like you said, T-Mac, 27% target share, 39% air yard share. That is like locked in wide receiver one, not necessarily for fantasy because the offense is bad, but wide receiver one usage from an individual player. The offense needs to turn around to actually make him a fantasy wide receiver one, to be clear. There's some sort of good stuff on Bryce, good-ish, especially given how bad he looked.
Rare Kyle cut his mic.
Look,
Yeah,
I agree. I don't think he played awfully well,
it.
but I'm not in the business of watching the film as far as it is like grading players. PFF grade him as their number 14 passer. They grade him with an accurate
words used to matter. Actions used to matter.
Accurate throw rate of 67%, which is really good. Maybe most importantly, maybe something that's a little more stable would just be a very low pressure to sack rate. And he was also credited with 3 drops from his receivers. I saw at least 1 or 2 of them that were just legit drops. So there's room for improvement in a number of facets that I think they can improve on. So I talked about in the 10 takeaways for week 1, the trio of number 1 overall picks who struggled in week 1. And among them, Trevor, Bryce, Caleb. Bryce was my number 1 concern. I think he's the one who I am most concerned with the floor falling out on.
I'm curious. Denny said it'd be good.
Yeah, I said it too. I'll take some.
The Bryce Sans rolls on. Okay. It was a hiccup.
I don't understand why they gave him such a limited supporting cast. We need to move on from this game, but Denny, we would be remiss if we did not let you mention James Conner, Trey Benson update. We shouted you down when you said you had him over Travis Etienne. Give us an update on this Cardinals backfield.
Yeah, so first of all, the Panthers are a massive run funnel defense. They were last year. They were in week 1. I'm going to write them up for my column on Friday if folks want to check that out. So Connor handled 11 rushes to Benson's 8 in week 1. Connor caught all 4 of his targets on 21 routes. Benson was targeted once on just 10 routes. I actually think that the Cardinals are probably going to shape up, barring weird game script, shape up as a really run heavy team this week. I like Connor, as you know by now, in a good matchup. I kind of think you might be able to get away with Benson if they truly do have a lot of script on their side and he can get 10 touches in this game.
Folks, James Conner is such a good play this week that you can play his backup.
That's true.
That's good. I have no rebuttal.
Denny, I didn't internalize how good of a spot it was for James Conner, though. You're at least right about that.
You are very much right about that. Neither the Texans nor Bucs were terribly impressive in week 1. The Bucs actually won, though, Kyle. We'll start with Houston. As was the case with the Bears, it just kind of seemed like a repeat of the Texans 2024 where their issues transferred over to 2025. Is it not that simple? What is the concern level right now? The Bears and Texans, to me, were probably the 2 most concerning teams coming out of week 1.
The concern level is so high that Bobby Sloak did nothing wrong because this offense looked no different. I thought he was the whole problem. 2 years ago, everyone was saying, oh, man, can't believe he structured such great offense that they got C.J. Stroud to get all these accolades or whatever. And last year, can't believe he was always so bad that he ruined C.J. Stroud. The answer was they were both at least a little correct, right? He did a good job his first year, didn't counterpunch his second year, couldn't really handle the offensive line, seemed to get worse. But the offensive line did not get any better this week, at least in week 1. Maybe they improved. They're a team that especially they just lost continuity as well. They lost multiple starters, traded away Laramie Tunsil, which I get that maybe it was just an untenable relationship. But the offensive line looks like they traded away the only good part, their left tackle. PFF ranked them as the number 27. Yep, PFF ranked them as the number 27 pass blocking unit in week 1. CJ Stroud was pressured on 41% of his dropbacks. When he threw the ball, he was not too bad, actually. I think he completed 9 of 10 or 8 of 11, something like that. But he was sacked 3 times and threw an interception on those plays as well. So he was pressured and made some very catastrophic mistakes. Maybe the sacks aren't what you would categorize as mistakes. Sometimes those are unavoidable, but some very detrimental plays to the team. Maybe most interestingly, although I don't think it'll hold, was when he was pressured, he was not able to look to Nico Collins, targeting him 2 or 3, whereas Dalton Schultz had 4 or 5 targets on the pressured dropbacks. But last year I know. I don't think so, though. Last year, even when CJ Stroud was pressured, he still looked to Nico Collins. So hopefully that is just a flash in the pan. And we truly do see, even when you're in dire straits, you just chuck it up, Nico down there somewhere. But the fact that this offensive line looked as bad as it did, which is what we should have expected, and CJ Stroud doesn't play awfully well under pressure, like you said, one of the more concerning week 1 showings.
Every wide receiver one in week one was just cruising around town in the bank examiner's Cadillac. Like, I don't know what it was, but like Nico Collins, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, we got a bet on week 2 bounce backs.
Oh, I can throw in one more note on the offense of why it was so terrible, because we don't really need to talk about these for fantasy. Dude, what are we doing with Justin Watson getting half of the routes on this team and Xavier Hutchinson getting 68% of the routes when they drafted 2 day 2 picks to fill these roles? Like, another reason that I don't think the offense has a lot of hope right now is they're playing Justin Watson on over half the routes. That is not tenable if you are trying to functionally have a passing game. So nothing going behind Nico Collins either, and what they're doing is stupid.
Bobby Slowick's still clearly texting in the plays. I think that's what's happening.
Dude,
yeah, the NFL needs to look into this. Denny, anything interesting going on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Narrow skill core, mostly as expected in week 1, including Emeka Egbuka looking sensational. How for real is Egbuka season?
It's real. 2 touchdown receptions on 4 overall receptions, getting away with it a little bit, only 6 targets on the day. Baker Mayfield, by every metric, I'm not going to bore you guys, but was truly miserable in week 1. Like, I hope that it's not a thing. I hope that it's a blip,
you definitely hope it's a thing, but that's all right.
You really want it to be a thing.
But I mean, he was terrible. Like, we talk about Caleb Williams being bad, Baker was worse somehow.
Your "I hope it's not a thing" shirt is raising the question.
It's raising question. I'm already answered with this shirt. But there's nothing much here. I mean, you're playing all your Bucs. Mike Evans ran cold. He'll be fine.
The Colts roughed up the Dolphins in week 1, as we've covered extensively on this show this week. They remain road underdogs, though, against the Broncos team. They're what? Nope. Colts are at home. I can't read.
Underdogs still.
They are underdogs at home, is what I meant, to the Broncos, despite demolishing the Dolphins. Is it as easy as saying Daniel Jones tore up an awful team and will now likely get torn up by a good defense? Or is there more? Does Daniel Jones have layers?
I mean, probably not layers, but I will give credit to his execution of a very well-structured offense. So in terms of running, the number 1 player in terms of just rush attempts on RPOs, which is a very Shane Steichen thing, was Jonathan Taylor. Not surprising. He lapped the field in carries on RPOs. And the number 2 player was also a Colt. It was backup running back DJ Giddens. They ran a ton of RPOs. They passed out of them more than any other team too, more than one team. I think it was like Spencer Rattler or something. But they did it, and they did it very well. Overall, they ran a ton of play action too. Second highest rate of play action for Daniel Jones, an average 11 yards per attempt on play action. This offense looks like it was designed very well for a slow processing mobile quarterback, which is both of the quarterbacks that were on this team. I think it's part of why they signed Daniel Jones, is they had a very stylistic comp for Anthony Richardson, not the insane athlete that Ant is, has a lot of the same flaws and is a good athlete. Those are the positives. They're going to get destroyed by Denver. This is a very strong defense. Vegas seems to agree with the fact they're at home and they're still nearly field goal underdogs with a pretty pathetic total of 42.5. I think Daniel Jones will be a streamer again in the coming weeks. I'm not counting on it this week.
The hashtag bookies, remember, they've been around the Daniel Jones.
They're familiar with Daniel Jones's game.
They're familiar with Daniel Jones's game. Denny's not. Denny thinks it's Jones season, apparently.
Yeah, Colts are going to win. Colts are going to win. The Broncos are not good. Sorry.
They might not be good. They barely beat the Titans last week, Denny. Give us a Colts pass catcher breakdown, part of your confidence, I guess. And quickly, is this a Bo Nix bounce back spot or not? It was not good at all in his home debut last week.
I just want to say about Daniel Jones, 3 rushes inside the 10-yard line last week. That's crazy stuff. So let's keep that going. Colts pass catchers, you're starting Tyler Warren in 12-team leagues, targeted on 40% of his routes, 70% route rate, participation rate last week. Michael Pittman led the team in targets, 28% target share. Now, Josh Downs was an issue. Only ran about half the routes last week. Only saw 3 targets. He commands, like Khalil Shakir, he commands targets at a high clip against zone defense. Denver does play zone at a very high rate. So maybe he gets there. But here's the other thing. The Colts were bottom 5 in 3 wide receiver usage last week. So
don't like that.
Well, it wasn't a competitive game. I don't know. It was a weird game.
If that lasts, it's a major blow to Josh Downs' fantasy prospect.
Oh yeah, the Downs thing's already over. We moved on from that. Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
It's already over.
That's right. We kicked Pat out of the fan club, which we should have left ourselves.
It's over.
We should have gone out the door with him. On Bo Nix, I just want to mention this: adjusted net yards attempt 2.3 last week for Bo Nix. So really good, great stuff there. That's what I'm saying about like. This Broncos offense truly stinks. Okay.
Well, it stunk for one game. Bo Nix got off to a cold start last year, too. Kind of mixing in a lot of new pieces.
The one thing you can hang your hat on, as far as Nix as a starter, 8 rushes left.
Can't think of anything.
It's 8 rushes. I mean, that's hard to beat.
That's funny. I actually mentioned that on the waiver wire show or something, where when he was really bad at passing in the first half of 2024, he relied on his legs a ton, and it helped save some very poor passing performances for fantasy.
I feel like they don't want him to run, but he might have to if he's off to another slow start. I was going to ask Kyle what's going on in the Broncos backfield, but I'll just tell you. J.K. Dobbins, 50% of the snaps. R.J. Harvey, only 30% of the snaps. Tyler Bidet, 20% of the snaps. Don't see any real reason to expect that to change this week. R.J. Harvey did provide the big play last week. Things are always up for grabs in Sean Payton backfields. But apparently what we thought was a 2-man committee is now a 3-man committee. And we're harvesting data points on this Broncos backfield is what we're doing. And we'll get back to you on what we learned. We'll also get back to you right after this. Tune in to NBC Sports Now for all the biggest stories in sports, beginning at 7 a.m. Eastern with PFT Live, followed by the Dan Patrick Show, the Dan Lebitard Show with Stu Gatz, Fantasy Football Happy Hour, and Chris Sims Unbuttoned. The NBC Sports Now channel is available on Peacock, the Roku channel, Samsung TV Plus, and more. Visit NBCSports.com/now for more details. Guys, I didn't have to itch my eye during the break.
That's good. Your eye was looking a little rough there.
It was looking a little red. I'm going to be honest. Something is in it. No, we're going to get it out after the show, but it's feeling a little better.
Man, this is your Jordan game, your Jordan flu game.
The Seattle Seahawks arrive in Pittsburgh as narrow road underdogs. Kyle, field goal, I guess you could quibble with narrow. Denny swears he has, quote, the goods on JSN, quote, not actually being good in week 1. Denny, state your case, and then Kyle, please demolish Denny.
You got it.
Okay, all right. I put it in the regression files. It is available for everyone to see. Okay, all right. So JSN takes in 90% of the team's air yards in week 1. He's targeted on 62% of his pass routes. Literally, I've never seen this.
Also expected.
The Seahawks, 15% below their expected pass rate. 23 pass attempts for Sam Darnold. So you're telling me that JSN is supposed to get there week in and week out in that environment where you have to have 100% of the air yards to get there.
Yeah, that was truly the thesis of the play all along. That there's no one else. Sam Darnold's good enough to get the ball to a guy. Clint Kubiak's been around the block enough to just get the ball to the guy. They're getting the ball to the guy.
I see it as very unsustainable.
Kyle, come on. Surely you got something good, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the problem is he was too good, I guess.
Come on, demolish him. Come on, kill him.
The answer was that I agree with that. He's not going to have those elite target shares, but I also think this is like a provably true thing. As your passing game attempts fewer passes, more of those attempts will go to the superstar. The fact that they threw 20 times and those all went to JSN is not that insane. In the same way that, like, in the games when the Vikings didn't pass a lot, you saw Justin Jefferson 60 to 70% target share, because when you are increasing your volume, then you can expand who you're throwing to. And I do think they'll probably attempt more passes going forward, but even if they don't, that's the whole point of dominating the targets. And I think the most interesting and notable point of week 1 for JSN was that he led the NFL in targets per route run from an out wide alignment, and he was second in yards per route run from an out wide alignment. And that is something that I personally said I did not think would happen. He had not been an out wide. He was a slot guy. He was a slot guy in college. He was a slot guy in the first 2 years of his career, and he ended up being really good out of the slot last year. But I thought if they have to move him outside, it's over. Turns out he's a monster if you move him outside. The fact that he can play all positions right now is like, sure, I do agree. He will not have a 90% air yard share going forward. Also, no one does. It's fine.
Speak for yourself. By the way, I told Patrick Crane this on the phone this week. you should always change your opinion of a player based on one game. I did do that with JSN last year, or the game where I forget where whoever was hurt. I guess DK
First game,
was hurt.
DK Metcalf was out. He went for like 180 yards.
Or they actually let him play on the outside, and he still played on the inside quite a lot. He did the true inside-out game for the first time ever and just totally dominated. I was like, okay, he can actually do this. That's what gave me confidence heading into the season. It was only one game, as Denny Carter points out, but I really am confident in JSN going forward as a wide receiver one, to be frank. But Denny, we'll give Denny a few more weeks of cope. Then anything transferable from that Steelers performance, or is it probably just going to go down as by far their best offensive day of the year?
I think the two things that are transferable, certainly not the touchdown rate, 13% touchdown rate for Aaron Rodgers. That's not happening. 4 air yards per attempt, so lots of check down stuff. Here's what can go forward: fast-paced offense, okay, top 10 in pace, and pass-heavy offense. One of the higher neutral pass rates of the week. So like that's shocking. My buddy JJ Zacharyson mentioned to me the other day that last time Arthur Smith had a decent quarterback, which I can't remember when that was at the moment.
That literally might have been Ryan Tannehill.
It was
Ryan Tannehill's good day.
It's probably Tannehill.
They actually were not ultra giga run heavy as he has been. Did I use that right?
You did.
Okay.
No, it's just really funny to hear you.
So that could actually be okay for some of these pass catchers. DK Metcalf used as like a short area guy
that was interesting.
No sense to me. Jonnu Smith, chess piece film guy, extraordinaire. I don't know what to do with that guy.
I don't either. Kyle, you have 30 seconds to tell us how over it is for Kenneth Walker III. Why do you agree that it's over?
Super, turbo, giga, nuclear, ultra. I've got 20 seconds left over. I mean, he was out-carried by Zach Charbonnet 12-10, and Charbonnet outplayed him by a mile. Like, Ken Walker finished just shy of dead last in yards after contact per carry and literally last in rush yards over expected per carry. He did nothing to prove the coaches who, I don't want to say benched him, but played him as an RB2 wrong. He proved them right that Sharp should see more work. All of those adjectives, giga, nuclear, ultra, over.
Steelers backfield, there's no point in talking about it. We'll see what happens.
You're starting Charbonnet, right? In 12 team?
Yes. Yes, for sure. And I've seen some people still ranking Kenneth Walker as an RB2. I think like you're living in fantasy land.
Yeah,
like
no.
You have to adjust. You have to, like, that happened. The game happened. You have to adjust. You have to move on. The Steelers backfield, there's nothing to say, right, Denny? Like, well, we'll see what happens. Like, who cares?
It's split up. Yeah, I mean, it's split up between Warren and Gainwell. Gainwell is the primary pass catching back. It's not Warren, so that stinks.
Oh my God, Arthur Smith. I was going to say I wasn't familiar with the game. It turned out I was too familiar with the game. What a joke. The 49ers arrive in New Orleans. Direly shorthanded Denny Carter. We'll get to that in a minute, but you stumped for Spencer Rattler this summer. People may forget. Do you like what you see? I actually don't know, do you?
I like the fantasy environment. The Saints had the quickest pace, offensive pace of the week last week. Their average seconds between snaps was less than 20, guys. Like, that's insane. I don't know if that's going to keep up, but it is in line with what Kellen Moore has done on offense in the past. So it doesn't come out of nowhere. So we have play volume on our side. Now, my thing with Rattler was not that I can't wait to play Spencer Rattler in one quarterback leagues or
we'll
even
see about that. I'm going to re-roll the tape. And we'll see.
Yeah, we're going to dig in. This is all on tape.
Yeah, I mean, you could have just clipped that. You could have carefully edited what I just said, and I just look like a Rattler
That's
stan.
A really good idea.
Actually, Pat and I told each other we can't say stan anymore. We're too old.
I still can, though.
Yeah, you can keep doing it. Kyle, you have like 7 more years of that.
Let's go.
But yes, but the volume and the pass volume is good for everybody in this offense, including my guy Juwan Johnson, who I would easily start as a top 10 tight end.
No one has worse their guys than Denny. No, Juwan, I don't know. It's interesting. An actual coaching staff has gotten their hands on Juwan Johnson, and he was quite involved in week 1. That might be another situation where you just have to react and get him in that tight end 1 mix. Kyle, lay out the state of the injured as heck San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy is officially out. Ricky Pearsall's in. Mac Jones, Kyle Shanahan's dream quarterback, is starting.
I tweeted this. I just tweeted a picture of the Wikipedia page for Chekhov's gun, which is like a film idea. Like when you put something in the scene, it has to be used. You got to be intentional with how you put stuff in your scene. They put Mac Jones in the scene, as Denny accurately pointed out at many times throughout the offseason. He was always going to make a start. I'm sorry if I was.
Denny was hammering that one over and over and over.
I can't believe it happened right away.
It did.
Yeah. Among the things you didn't mention with the injury situation, George Kittle on IR. The team split his routes between Luke Farrell and Jake Tunges. There is not a starter amongst those two for fantasy purposes. Juwan, maybe he's going to play, maybe not. He's dealing with a shoulder thing. It seemed like it wasn't that bad. And then he showed up, I believe, as DNP on the injury report. So truly no clue if he's going to play. He honestly didn't look great in week one. He missed much of camp with a maybe fake, maybe not calf injury. But either way, Ayuk's
it was so fake it became real.
Sort of. I mean, Ayuk didn't even, I don't think he even faked an injury last year, but just the missed time clearly affected him. He had like bad.
It was the classic of George Costanza. It's not a lie if you believe it. And then he just woke up one day and was hurt.
He was like, "Oh my God, my calf. It hurts so
bad."
bad.
And like last year, Ayuk, I don't think there was even a fake injury. He just was not practicing. And it was clear that lack of practice time seemed to affect his like quality of play on the field. And maybe it's some of that as well with Juwan. But all this is to say that Ricky Pearsall does seem to be the team's number one receiver. And I think Mac Jones can probably operate the Shanahan offense. That's like the whole point of signing him, is he will just point and click to the best of Shanahan's play calling abilities. And that's going to be good for Pearsall, and it's going to be great for CMC, who caught 10 passes in week one. Didn't look awfully efficient between the tackles. It will not matter if he's getting 30 touches.
I've made this point several times in the show, so sorry that I'm repeating myself, but I think the main difference between Mac and Brock Purdy, like on a play-to-play basis, you're like, wow, this looks pretty similar to the normal 49ers offense. Like he brings this offense to its baseline, but as crazy as it is, like Purdy gives it a ceiling. There's no real ceiling with Mac Jones. I think that is the difference between Mac and Purdy, like a big play, explosive play ceiling. We're here to the final game. They said it couldn't be done. The Rams outlasted the Texans, but now they head on the road as solid favorites against the Titans, Denny, who did not perform well in week one. I know you're coping hard. Cam Ward, actually, though, you keep saying did nothing wrong if you watch the film. Anything to hang our hats on with Cam Ward.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah.
He only took 6 sacks, like 5 of which were easily avoidable.
Oh, no. I actually did not know that.
Yeah, no, the pressure to sack rate thing is a nightmare. Look, this team couldn't have started with a worse matchup against Denver in Denver. Like that's a really good defense.
No one goes into Bo Nix's house.
No one.
No.
Okay. And especially not a rookie in his first game. The coaching for the Titans is bottom barrel stuff.
Problem.
Like unbelievably incoherent and bad. They need to get that guy. They need to boot Callahan.
They do. Out. Get him out.
Listen, I've been a Titans fan a long time. Never seen anything like this. But Cam Ward cannot be started. Cannot. Okay. Even in super flex. But I think you still can, get Calvin Ridley in your lineup. You still Chigga running 85% of the routes.
Calvin Ridley basically works for the bank at this point. Like,
wait. Alec,
he's got employee of the month written on his.
He's a bank examiner employee of the month. Yeah, it's absurd. It's got absurd lengths. Here.
So Io Maynor was a full-time player in the offense. He accounted for a team high 48% of the air yards, 133 air yards. Okay, that's fun. If he
anytime a guy Denny likes has an 8 out of 20 and gets a bunch of air yards that will never get caught, he's like, that's pretty fun, guys. And then anytime it's a good player, he's like, we can't be doing that. No fun around here.
I like something called the process. So anyway, Io Maynor is interesting in deep leagues.
Kyle, you might not really have anything to say on this one. Business as usual for the Rams. It certainly looked like it in week one.
Yeah, I mean, Kyron, 80% snap share, 78% of the team's carries, not particularly effective as a receiver, but he does still run plenty of routes. Clear RB1, albeit not really like going to threaten for top 3, top 5 status. And maybe sort of more interesting is Puka target share and air yard share and first read target share. So just every metric that we have to measure involvement, all around 40%, an elite number. And that was despite missing some time to go get like a cut on his eye patched up. And I think this is either a quote from Puka or a quote from Devontae, where like, sometimes you got to play like life is short or whatever, as in like you got to run across the middle of the field and get rocked, which is funny because Devontae was not saying that when Jimmy Garoppolo was throwing those passes to him. But now that his team's like pretty good, he's like, yeah, I'll put my body on the line when I think we're like a Super Bowl contender. Obviously, Puka, great 5.9 yards per outrun, targeted on half of his routes. Just complete superstar, and it was a complete farce that he went into the second round in drafts. So
Puka could be the wide receiver one overall. You guys are the wide receiver ones overall to me. Check out Denny's regression files. Check out his funnel report, which I think we're renaming on Friday. Check out Kyle's 10 stats article, his stardom, sit-em, my rankings. Check out our other shows this week. Check it out when we come back on Monday, where Kyle Dvorchak and I answer your waiver wire questions and, of course, our Sunday night recap show. So for Denny and Kyle, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you real soon.